All right, guys, settle down, settle down. Happy to be with you guys for another episode of the Young Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Jay. I'm super excited to be with you guys, as I am every single week that we do the show. Welcome in. I'm joined today by my pal, Mike Van Pelt. No, not the guy off Sports Center. Uh, but don't worry, I was confused at first too. I'm like, gosh, is that Mike Van Pelt? Sports Center? What? It's not. I wasn't disappointed at all because my mic is way cooler.
Yeah.
Mike's a men's life coach. He also hosts a podcast called the Truman Podcast. A little bit about it is as a men's life coach, his mission is to guide Christian men in embracing vulnerability and authenticity in health, wealth, and relationships. Mike, you encourage them to act courageously, enabling the elimination of their false selves and the restoration of their true identities. You achieve this with your platforms such as your podcast, workshop, books, and group coaching. Ultimately, you aim to empower men with the insights and resources necessary for leading fulfilling lives rooted in faith, excellence, and purpose, guiding them on the journey to becoming a good man, a better man, and a true man now. You are also a father. Your oldest just turned 21, and you also have an 18-year-old daughter. And you were a stay-at-home dad for a period of time. And yeah, I'm not sure if kind of what else your home and your life looks like. So feel free to take it away and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about the true man himself.
Yeah, Jay, thanks for the introduction. You know, the funny thing about Scott Van Pelt is I'm commonly asked if I'm related to Scott Van Pelt. And my standard answer is this. I don't know that you picked up on this. So here, are you ready for this one?
I'm ready.
Scott Van Pelt refers to himself as SVP.
Yes.
Now, my name's Mike Van Pelt, so I get to refer to myself as MVP.
MVP.
And so when I tell people is this, Scott only wishes he was me because he's just an SVP. I'm the MVP. How about that?
I love that.
Yeah. So a little bit about me. My family, we live in just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, in Kennesaw, beautiful Kennesaw Marietta area, just down the street from Kennesaw National Battlefield. If you're into Civil War stuff, and so I get to drive through that quite often. It's pretty cool. My wife and I have been married for 27 years now. And
that's awesome. Congratulations.
as you mentioned, we have two. I'm getting old, man. I got I got a 21-year-old in college, and my daughter is a freshman in college, chasing her dream, getting a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, chasing her dream to go to Broadway someday. So, yeah, it's family far and our dog Barkley. I don't want to leave him out because he's always up here in my office on a daily basis, listening to me do my thing. So yeah, so that's what my family looks like, and of course my daily on a daily basis. I'm in my coaching world, True Man Life Coaching, and we created the podcast because, quite honestly, I wanted to be able to communicate with guys about what was going on in the world and help them be better dads and better fathers and better men. And, the world these days wants to paint this picture of, we often hear these really silly terms like toxic masculinity and that men are bad. Men aren't bad. And in fact, we're better when we're together and learning from each other. And so I wanted to put a podcast together where we could bring that value to men as a part of the coaching I do. So then I've got a couple of side businesses that have really rolled out of podcasting, amazingly enough. It's funny how the whole podcasting thing became such a part of my story. So, man, that's what that's what my day-to-day is, hanging out here in True Man World Headquarters.
I love that, man. No, that's incredible. It takes men like you who have been through the life of being a dad, who are wanting to give back to other dads and other men and bring us together. And it's so important for us that do have these platforms, no matter how big or how small, to be able to make an impact, because there's 7 billion people in the world, right?
Yeah.
And half of them at least are men, and half of those men are probably dads. And so you're thinking just billions of men, billions of dads. It's at the billions point. There's billions of dads
Yeah.
worldwide that, and we're all in the same boat. We're all feeling the same things. I mean, just in our country here in America, there's millions in the greater Atlanta area. You probably have millions of people. I live in Washington, and
Yeah.
there's millions of people here, and so there's these astronomical numbers of dads, yet there's an astronomical number of podcasts out there too. But as you know, with podcasts, 90% fail after 10 episodes. And then after that, after 15, 20, 25, once you get past 25, you're in the top like 0.1% in the world or something, just based on length alone. So something crazy like that. But it's so important to take our platform so seriously and to make sure that they are a valuable asset, because it is
Yeah.
about bringing men together to help create that community, create and foster, development, create and foster community, friendship, love, acceptance, because the narrative, at least in our country, is hate men. Like, it's just hate men. Doesn't matter what color, doesn't matter what, well, except if they're the only men that aren't hated, at least I feel, and this, no, I'm not gonna say it, that could get me canceled. I'm not gonna say that could get me canceled. But it's pretty much like hate men, except for outside of like one category of men. Um, but it's
Here's
that's the
the thing.
narrative.
Yeah, this is how I look at it. So, men, as men, we are the masters of bearing what we're feeling. So, the stuff that happens to us, we just stuff it down deep inside and we hope that we never have to deal with it. Now, ultimately, we always have to deal with it. And where it typically shows up is in our relationships. Why do our relationships fail? Now, I'll touch on that. But what I want to say about what you're saying is that in this country, there is a loneliness and there's a loneliness problem. In fact, the Surgeon General of the United States, former Surgeon General, has an 83-page report out on the Surgeon General's website that talks about loneliness in this country. And they are now calling it an epidemic. An epidemic. In proportion to, the same as the drug problem that's going on in this country or whatever. And men are really bad about this. The statistics for men and loneliness is really bad. And I typically say, although I work with all kinds of men, that my typical guy that I work with is probably between 40 and 60. So somewhere in that middle age area. And middle-aged men in the United States are taking their lives more than any other age bracket. Now, scientists say, well, we don't know why that is. I know why that is. And number one, they don't have healthy relationships, and they've probably isolated themselves from people that can help them. And so, there's a loneliness, there's an isolation, there's a mental health issue going on, and they're just not around the people that can help them. Now, I am the first one to admit some people don't want help. I get that. Okay. But overall, I think that there's some mental health challenges going on in this country that should be dealt with. We're not dealing with them. And then the other thing that we need is men being in community. Okay. It's not weird. It's important. We were built to be in community. And so men learning from each other, is really important, because when we put ourselves in positions to be isolated, we do really stupid things.
Very
Now, we
true.
do stupid things in groups too, but that's fun.
100%. That's more fun. But I'm glad that you brought all that up. So I'm going to pull up a website here to help kind of illustrate this for the listeners that may be on YouTube or watching the video version of this. I think it's really important to show, like, we're not just speaking from a place like, oh, well, there's higher in this category. No, let me show you the facts.
Yeah.
Let's show the listener the facts for men versus women for suicide, because I talk about it all the time on the podcast. And I think you're 100% right. It is an epidemic. So many dads I talk to, so many men I talk to, so many other podcasters are all feeling the same way. Like, this is a big, big problem. So you see here, 11th in suicide, leading cause of the U.S. 48,000 people, Americans, died by suicide in 2021. There were an estimated 1.7 million suicide attempts. I don't know if there's a city that has a population of 1.7 million, but you could probably think of a pretty significant city with almost 2 million people. All those people attempted to commit suicide. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
The age-adjusted suicide rate in 2021, 14.04 per 100. So average age about 14. In 2021, men died by suicide 3.9 times more than women. 132 suicides per day. White males accounted for 69.68 of suicide deaths in 2021. So of that nearly 50,000, 70% is white males. Which, who's the most hated person in America?
Yep.
It adds up. There's a direct correlation. I'm not saying correlation is causation, but it's causation in this aspect. In 2021, firearms accounted for 54.64 of all suicide deaths. So 25, almost 24,000 people plus decided to shoot themselves with the firearm.
Yeah, Jay, and
Lethal means.
what's important about that statistic that you give out is when we look at men versus women and suicide, women actually try suicide at a higher rate than men do.
They do
Men
attempt more,
choose
correct.
lethal means to take care of the business. So in other words, there's like, they'll use a firearm, and once that's kind of irreversible. So
true.
men choose lethal means to kill themselves typically.
True. And I wanted to go down here to look kind of the age range right here. You look at this, let me see, where's this highest one? 85 and older. Like, that's crazy. They're the
Yeah.
highest group. And then you have the pink, which is going to be 30. I believe this color looks like it's 35 to 44. And so you have this 35 plus range, a lot of it being within this 45 plus. So right in that age you're talking about. If you're not looking here on the screen, in 2021, the suicide rates were higher among adults 25 to 34, with 19.48 per 100,000, and 75 to 84, 19.56 per 100,000, with the rate highest among adults age 85 or older.
Yeah.
Younger groups have consistently lower suicide rates than middle-aged and older adults. In 2021, adolescents and young adults aged 15 to 24 had suicide rates of 15.15. And then you look by race and ethnicity. The top one here, look at that. White males, the very top. White males, and that's a purple, American Indian males. They're top by a wide margin here. It's by almost 10% more than the next one, which is going to be, I want to say, African American males. And then you have, again, males, Pacific Islander, Asian Pacific Islander males. And then the female categories are ranked among the lowest here. So it's up there. They're all up there. They're all crazy high. White males highest 25.23. American Indian males 24.81. And then I'm jumping around here. Black African American males 13.89. Pacific Islander males 10.05. Males are the top four. So that just again shows that it's men taking their own lives. Granted, it is by more lethal means, like you mentioned, but again, it's because they feel like they have no other thing left. And you look at that age group, that 85 plus, like, yeah, I think it goes right along what you were saying. There's the relationships.
Well, yeah. So what I would point out is obviously we could look at, gosh, why are men in their 80s, having these problems? Well, The fact of the matter is, there's a couple of things going on. One, some guys are going to have health related issues, and maybe there's something else going on there, and they decide to end it all. Unfortunately, um, but one of the things that we do not value, and this really bothers me, one of the things we do not value in our society is our sage adults. So, what is a sage? So, um, there are two or three people that have talked about this. John Eldridge, if you ever look at John Eldridge's books, he's most well known for Wild at Heart and his wild, men stuff. And he talks about the stages of manhood. And so a sage man is considered really 60 or above, that silvered hair guy that has the ability to pass on knowledge to, the younger folk. Why is this important? Somebody that's lived into their 80s has lived an incredible life and has so much knowledge to pass on. I seek out sage men in my life. Why? I want to know what the secrets are. I want the shortcuts. And these guys know, if there is a shortcut, what it is. They're mature, they're wise, and they've had the opportunity to slow down in their life and think about things that maybe they had a few regrets, and they've also had time to think about their legacy. And so we undervalue these men in our lives, and they want to pass this knowledge on. And we should be seeking these guys out. And what happens is, a lot of these guys, they get to the end of their life and they don't have anybody there, or they think they don't have anybody there to pass that knowledge on to. And so they don't feel valued. And so then you start seeing suicide statistics like we're talking about. But I encourage young men, and I still consider myself a young man. I'm leaning towards the sage
100%.
stage, but I have people that are seeking me out now, which is really cool. And I want to help them in a big way. But I have men in my life that I can't wait to talk to and find out about life with. And so I encourage guys to find that sage man in your life and surround yourself by him. Talk with them, be curious with them, and learn from them. I think you'll find out that they want to pass on their knowledge as bad as you want it. And so when I see statistics like older men taking their lives, it's just a shame.
100%. I think you're so right. One thing I was really grateful growing up that kind of gave me a different perspective on this. My brother and I both, is that we were both raised by grandparents.
Mm,
And so I got a very good opportunity to get to be really close to my grandma and really close to my grandpas before they passed away and whatnot. So I've gotten a chance to be really close to my grandparents. And I'm super grateful for that because I don't mind talking to, I guess, old people or older adults or however whatever the mature adults, whatever the person first, saying is of it to be in line with being PC or whatever. But and I've done a lot of research within my field of psychology on like the older adult population and working with them and understanding kind of how their minds work and stuff. And I'm just really grateful that I was able to be raised by my grandparents. And then growing up, always encouraged to like go to the old folks' home for like
mm,
youth group activities. We would go and play
yeah,
bingo with the old people. We
yeah,
would go and do service for them. We would go and carol to them during the holidays and like be able to bring that joy and being able to have that perspective. Like, man, they're so grateful that we're just there. Like,
yeah,
they don't care how bad we're singing. They don't care if we are terrible at the game. They don't care if we're just awful at whatever we're doing with them. They don't care because they're just happy we're there because they're so lonely and
yeah,
they don't have no one coming to visit them. They don't have family that are coming to see them regularly. Not well, some do. Some do, not a lot
Mm.
though. Um, and they're kind of just put here to kind of live out their days and go through the motion. So it's really hard to see, but it's so important to go and get that, I guess, wisdom and just hear the stories of old because you can get such a different perspective. You can learn things. You can get that perspective of people who have gone through it before you, grew up in a completely different time. Because if you're talking to someone that's 80, they were born in the 40s. They were born during World War II. They were
Yeah.
born during the legal segregation of people in our states. Um, like they lived through it. They served in Vietnam and these wars post World War II and did all the things and like think like man, you've been through all this. You've seen significant changes in this country in the last 80 years of your life. Like
Yeah.
what do you know kind of thing.
So much value and wisdom there. Um, and it kind of circles back to, uh, I was recently in a collaboration book called Cracking the Rich Code. It was a book that was done in conjunction with Jim Britt and Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank and endorsed by Tony Robbins. And in that book, I wrote a chapter called The Power of Asking for Help. And it's really my story on why I stopped asking for help. And, I was thinking about that as you were talking about that because, there are a lot of people you can go to for help, but certainly our elder sage adults are one of them. And because you can seek out that wisdom from them. I made an unwise decision when I was young, when I got glasses at the age of 6, and I would have people come up to me. That was uncommon back in 1976, by the way. I would have adults come up to me and say, "Oh, you look so smart. You must be smart," and because I was wearing glasses, and I internalized that. Why did I don't know. These are the crazy things we do when you're young. I internalized that, and I was very introverted at that stage. And what that caused me to do was stop asking questions. So I wouldn't you would never see me raise my hand in class and ask for help on anything, because if I did, that meant I wasn't as smart as everybody thought that I was. So I hid from that. And that shows up in life, especially the older you get, because if you haven't asked for help, you fall behind. And that became a theme for me as I started getting older. I would try to take everything on myself and not ask for help. So, the funny line always is I was never the guy. If my wife and I were in the car, we're on a family trip. Of course, now we have GPS on our phones, so you don't have to take a map with you. Guys, that's what that glove box in your car was for. Maps, believe it or not, for all you young people. But, you know, I was the guy that if we were lost would never stop and ask for help. That would be no way. That would be a direct punch in the mouth to my manhood, right? And I will tell you what I found out along the way is that is absolutely no way to live. You should not fear asking for help in your life. And if you're surrounded by the right people, they will show up and gladly help you. And that is an important lesson that I found in life. And I've also found that I wasn't alone in not asking for help, that a lot of guys don't ask for help, typically for a wide range of reasons like the fear of rejection, just this fear of uncertainty, on if they ask for help, what will happen. Just this feeling of not being authentic if they ask for help, or just feeling unworthy. I mean, these are things that guys feel. It's why they don't ask for help, and that's a shame, really. And so my encouragement to everybody is don't be afraid to go ask for help. It could be on anything. I think we live in a society, a culture where, and even adults are this way, right? We've fallen prey to our smartphone or dumb phone, depending on how you want to refer to it. We've fallen prey to social media, and we think that that's where our relationships are. And I'm going to call bull crap on that and say, no, your relationships are not online or in your smartphone. They're right there in front of you, doggone it. They're right
I
there
know.
in front of you, and you have to nurture those relationships. Now, how do you do that, Mike? Well, here's an easy way to do it. Just ask. Ask
Very
somebody
true.
how they're feeling today. How are you feeling today? Get to know them. Build relationships. You cannot build a relationship. I tell this story all the time. I distinctly recall when I was in Little League, I played a number of positions. My favorite was catcher, by the way. But I remember I have this vision of being in the outfield and looking into the stands and seeing all the parents actually talking with each other. Now, if you go to any high school, Little League, whatever event, nowadays, what are the parents doing? They're staring at their phone, really hoping nobody talks to them or bothers them, because I mean, you wouldn't want to be bothered while you're on Facebook, right? How are you building relationships if your face is planted into your phone? You're not. And our brain is not built for all this computer technology that's out there. That's why young people these days are having so many problems. They'll say, well, so and so's got ADHD or whatever, they're depressed. Stop looking at your computer. We didn't have all this while I was growing up. And this is not a story about, oh, I walked uphill in snow. That's not what this is. We seriously, and people will go, well, Mike, you didn't have the science. That's crap. We just didn't have these problems because we weren't walking around with a computer glued to our grill every day. It just
True.
didn't happen. And so I think that we got to get back to that. We've got technology's great when it works. Most of the time I find it an obstacle to everything I'm trying to achieve. I use online for my podcast, for my marketing and all this stuff because I have to. That's where the hurt and the wounded are. That's where they're hanging out. And so I have to go after them. But quite honestly, if I was not, I just had an eye test, and I said, and we were basing some of the prescription on the fact I'm in front of my computer monitor all the time. And I said, man, I look forward to the day when I'm out more in front of crowds and not in front of my computer monitor. And I guess I'm getting old. She goes, are you retiring? No, no. I want to be in front of people more. And I
Mm-hmm.
think people want to be in front of people more. They don't even know how to do that anymore. So anyway, that's my rant about relationships.
No, I mean, a lot of that's super right. I mean, one thing that I talk to a lot of men about and a lot of dads is just that, and I'm not a coach. I've thought about it. I don't think I would I would do that. Um, but one thing I talk to a lot of men about and a lot of people about in general is that you have to put in the time to those relationships. You have to put in the effort. You
Yes.
have to put in the desire to grow and build that relationship. You can't build a strong relationship with your kids if you're literally going, as an example here, if you're going from home while you're sitting on your phone and they're playing with the blocks and you get up, get in the car, take them to the park, and then you're sitting on the bench on your phone. Like
Yeah.
what was that? What did that do? You change the scenery a little bit. Maybe they have a little bit more space to run around and play, but you didn't do anything different. You just got in the car, drove them back home. You were on your phone. Either place, you were the same. You didn't change. You didn't do anything different. And a lot of that, I think we do crave relationships. COVID and everything killed that for a lot of people,
Yeah.
that we don't want to interact now. We were essentially forced, some can say brainwashed, to not talk to other people, not interact with other people except for through a screen or through social media, or we were forced to do these things in a
Yeah.
way that we were trained like, oh, well, this is a better interaction because now I'm safe. Now I'm okay. Or if I'm having a gathering, I can have 10 people. Well, it's not even worth it because out of those 10 people, three are probably feeling symptoms and now they don't want to come. And it's the whole thing. It's like it killed being social, it killed being around other people.
It's a
It,
mechanism for control. Some people use this as a mechanism for control. Why? Because they know, the American family is the most vital and important thing that we have. Being a dad and a father, if you're listening to this, is the one of the more important roles that you will have in your life. And it's unavoidable. At some point, you're probably going to wound your kid inadvertently. Something's going to get said. Something's going to, it doesn't mean you're not a good dad. You're doing everything you can to love your kids. Being a dad is a very difficult and tough thing to do. There's no playbook, right? But there's no excuse for not getting to know your kids and spend time with them. And, you will regret that time. So there was a period in my life where I was just trying to figure it out. My wife was a senior executive in a company, and I did not like what I was doing. I had no passion for it. And she said, listen, we're good. Why don't you be a stay-at-home dad for a while? Our kids were really young at the time. Take care of the kids and figure out what you want to do. And then during that time frame, I had not completed my college degree, and we would always talk about how important school was with our kids. And I thought, man, you're a hypocrite. If you're going to lead well, you better finish this up. And I went back. I got my undergraduate degree. I got my graduate degree. I was doing a tremendous amount of volunteer work. But interestingly enough, what happened to me was I lost my identity during that time to some degree. In other words, I was a stay-at-home dad, and everybody would go, well, that's really cool. You get to spend all this time with your kids. And in my mind, I was brought up in a world that said the man is supposed to go out and support the family, right? And so my mind said, Mike, you have the knowledge, skills, and ability to do this, this, and this. You could be CEO of a company or, whatever the case may be. And my mind went, I need to be here. And, so I was home with my kids. They were getting well taken care of. But my mind, I wasn't always present because I wanted a career. I had a desire to have a career. I wanted to impact the world. I wanted to be a leader in the world. That's where my mind was. And, to some degree, I look back on it. My kids now, they're older. They turned out great. They're amazing people. I'm so excited to see, them get through college and see where everything goes. But there are things, now I look back at it, I'm like, wish I could have done that differently. And, we really want to try to avoid those regrets in our life if we can, because, I always used to think it was funny. People would say, man, enjoy that time with your kids because they grow up so fast. Men, enjoy that time with your kids because they grow up so fast in the blink of an eye. My wife and I were talking the other day, and we were talking about an event that happened 10 years ago. And in my mind, when she was talking about it, I'm like, man, was that like 2 or 3 years ago? That was 10 years ago. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no way that could be, but time goes by so fast, and you're never going to get that time back with your kids. You're never going to get that time back with your kids. And, Jay, as I was telling you, I'm getting ready after we get done recording this podcast. My car is loaded up, ready to go. I'm headed to a retreat. There's probably going to be, I didn't look at the list. There's well over 100 guys that are going to be at that retreat, somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 or 150 guys. What am I going to find when I get there? I've been to enough retreats now. I'll tell you, I'm going to have 8 people at my table, and half those people at that table, and I'm being conservative here, but half those people at my table are going to tell me a story about a relationship with their children. And it ain't going to be a good one.
Mm-mm.
And, I've heard a lot of stories. I do a lot of men's retreats. I get around a lot of men. I hear a lot of stories, and I'll tell you, what I hear more times than not when a man starts talking about his children is sorrow and regret. And that's tough. That's tough. And I always encourage people and say, there's always you you can heal from this, and there's always a shot at rebuilding that relationship. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. But there's if you love your kid, there's always a shot at that relationship. And if they reject you, that's a different story. But if you initiate, say, man, I want to be a part of your life. I want to love you. At least give them the choice if that's what you want. Then I think that's a great first step. But yeah, man, you never get that time back, and you never stop being a dad. That's what I found. I mean, my son, he still lives at home. He goes to a local college, and every time I see him and he's leaving, man, I'm like, hey, just be careful. Love you. You know. Yeah, and I'll never let that go, right? And
Mm-hmm.
my wife and I all the time are telling our kids, hey, we're your parents, man. We're just looking out for you. Because, right, my kids are at that age where it's like, I'm stupid, Dad. They haven't figured out that I know a thing or two yet.
Not yet, not till they come calling. Not till they come calling and needing, Dad, what do I do for this? Or, Dad, what do I need
Yeah.
to do? Dad, how do I file my own taxes? Um,
Yeah, they don't. They'll probably have us doing it again.
exactly. They'll be like, Dad, how do I do this? Dad, how do I do this? Because I know that's how I was. That's how I still am sometimes. I'm like, Dad, how do I do this? Or Dad, what should I do here? Dad, what should I do here? I mean, I'm almost 30, and so it's like it's still going. Like, Dad, what do I do for this? Like, that'll never go away. Uh,
No, can I mention something on that? And I love the
mhm.
way you set that up, and this is important. When where does the name True Man in podcasts and in life coaching come from? So True Man is right out of Scripture. It's out of the Bible. It's Jesus Christ walked with this on earth as a true man. And when we were forming my men's small group, we looked for a name. We were trying to come up with a name, and we thought, well, Jesus Christ is the best example in the world. So, we'll call it True Man. And I'm not some marketing genius, so I brought named the podcast that, and my business that. And the beauty in that is that you get to decide what a true man is. But there's examples out there. There is a big example out there in Jesus and how he walked on the face of the earth, and the relationship that he had with his Father, right? The disciples, they'd be sitting around and be like, where's Jesus? I don't know. He took off to the woods. He went out in the woods. Why? To spend time with his Father. And, my dad, hey, Dad, he's out on a walk right now. He's probably, I'll send him this podcast, and he loves to listen to all the podcasts. There's nothing better than having a father and a dad in your life. And, Jesus is your father. And it's important to know that, because really why I'm even on this podcast today, why I even started my business. I was a Christian all my life, but I discovered what intimacy with God looked like. And it tastes really sweet, by the way. And it's the same intimacy that exists here on earth when you think about a father and a son relationship. And Jesus was sent here to earth to model that. So if you take that model, you can begin to understand a little bit better about what intimacy looks like and how you can share that with your children.
True. I love that. That's a great way to throw that together. Anything else that you want to mention, or are you ready to jump into the YDP3 here?
Let's go, man. Fire it up.
So YDP3 is 3 questions that I like to end every podcast with, to kind of leave us on a philosophical note, if you will, of sorts. If you will. It's only so philosophical here on the Young Dad podcast. But my name of my podcast is based on, because our last name is Young, and we became dads very young, hence Young Dad podcast. So we're less creative than you, at least.
I'm just entrusted with the name True Man. That's how I look at it in all seriousness. God has entrusted me to use the name True Man, so I have to honor him in everything that I do. That's how I
True.
look at it.
No, I love that. I can, relate there to like he's entrusted me with this name of this podcast, like Young Dad Podcast, to like reach
Yeah.
out to this young audience of these dads who are growing up and getting into their fatherhood journeys,
Yeah.
to be able to help them grow and develop to become just like great fathers for who they want to be and who they're going to become and things like that. So,
Yeah.
uh, definitely a great way to look at that there. But our YDP3, three questions I ask every guest to end us here. First question is, where are you rooted? And this could mean like where you're physically rooted, or like what are the roots of who you are, Mike? Like what are your core values? What makes up the innermost workings of you?
Well, I am the beloved son of God, which is really cool. And that's the biggest place that I'm rooted in. Everything flows from my relationship with Christ. And that's that is everything to me. And once I got out of my own way, by the way, which is a big percentage of this, as a young dad, what you will try to do a lot of times is control life. You're not in control of life, by the way.
Not at all.
And so, what I've learned in my wisdom is that God's in control of my life. And when you turn it over to him, you can take a lot of pressure off yourself to be the man that you want to be.
100%. And I think just a way I can kind of put that into words, something I teach my Awana kids, my third through sixth graders, is that a few key phrases so far this year is, God's never in a hurry, he's never late. He has this big, beautiful picture of like who you are and who you're going to be, like your entire life. The finest details of this big, beautiful masterpiece of a painting. That's your life. It's already painted. He's working on the fine details every single day. He's working on those details. He already knows. And then, in addition to that, one thing that one of my pastors told me one time I met with him is that to kind of help reinforce that concept of not being in control was like, he's like, look, like you just need to pray that the things that you need to get done today, that you'll get done today. Like the things that need to happen today, just pray that you'll be guided to do those things. Just pray that you'll be guided to get those things accomplished and done. And he's like, everything else after that will fall into place. But
Yeah.
as long as you're praying for that, like it's all gonna fall into place. And now every single day, whenever I pray, I make sure I put that as part of my prayers to make sure that, hey, look, I have all these things to do. These are all the things I know I need to get done today or should get done today. But look, help me get the things that absolutely need to get done today done. And so now my
Great.
priority list isn't my priority list. It's beyond me. It's greater than me. And I feel myself being way more productive than I ever could have
Yeah.
dreamed because of that. Because it's not, I'm guided, I'm moved, I'm working, and I get things done faster, quicker, easier, seamlessly. The words come, everything
Yeah.
comes just so much easier and so much better. So,
UCLA basketball coach John Wooden back in the day, one of the greatest
mhm,
basketball coaches of all time, he had a saying, be quick, but don't be in a hurry. And
true,
there's tremendous amount of wisdom in that. So be quick, but don't be in a hurry.
true. All right, our next question here is what grounds you? So when you're feeling stressy and depressy, kind of all over the place, out of whack, what helps bring you back? Brings you back to like center.
You know, one of the things that I was introduced to, um, gosh, by a wonderful woman, another coach. I surround myself with a lot of great coaches, by the way. So probably about 5 or 6 years ago, she introduced me to this breathing tool called heart math.
Okay.
Why is that important? I mean, prayer obviously is important, but what I found was that in moments where, and in men's circles, one of the things that comes up quite a bit is anger, right? I get angry really quick. I get angry really fast, and somebody cuts me off in traffic, and I'm giving them the middle finger, and blah 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 blah. But what she brought me with heart math was a breathing technique that I could do where I was just able to pause and center myself and just stop in the moment before I acted. And so I always, and John Eldridge, again, you hear me refer to John Eldridge, has a wonderful little app called the Pause app. Here's another thing that you can do. So I talk about pausing a lot. Before you get angry or upset, or you say something stupid that will ruin your day or wreck a relationship, take a moment to pause, just and think about what you're going to do. Because if you make a mistake in that moment, you risk relationships in your life. And so I think one of the things that I pass on to a lot of guys is just pause. Give yourself 1, 2, 3 seconds to center yourself. It may be a prayer, it may be a meditation, it may be a breath, but do something to slow yourself down. Yes, there you go.
There it is. All right. So I just want to leave this up for a minute just to give everyone kind of an idea of what Mike's talking about. You said sorry. You said John Eldridge, and I almost called you John because I was looking at the name John right there. But kind of what Mike's talking about right here. This app. Definitely one that I'm gonna look into. I'm gonna download. Um, look into this 'cause I think
So
it's a
they
great
work
tool.
you
So
into it. They work you into it, by the way. So you do they're on that app, and it's free. Um, there's a 1 minute pause, a 3 minute pause, a 5 minute pause, and a 10 minute pause. And so you kind of have to work your way up because, quite honestly, if you've ever done anything like that, 1 minute for some people feels like an eternity.
yeah,
But when you spend time on this, it's really nothing for me to spend the first part of my day could be as long as 20 to 30 minutes in prayer and meditation. And now I had to start slow, right? But it's, I've learned to incorporate, my heart math and prayer and meditation together. It's just something that I personally do. And it's a great way for me to get grounded and start the day.
100%. Love that. All right. Our last question here is let's say we're out ICU. I'm gonna set the scene. Your kids are a little older. You probably don't take them to the park anymore. And it'd be weird if you went to the park by yourself without
That might
kids.
be these days. Yeah.
So let's say that we are just at a restaurant or something, right? ICU with a group of your guy friends. I'm sitting by myself. I see you over with guy friends. You guys are having a great time. You're laughing. You're joking. You're having a great time. You guys all look happy. You look so happy. I make eye contact with you. Classic Hallmark movie moment, love story. We make eye contact from across the room. You look at me and you're like, "Whoo, that guy looks. He looks tired. He looks down. He looks just rough.
Yeah.
RUFF rough." Um, and then I make eye contact with you. I see there's an open seat next to you, so I'm like, better time than ever. I walk over. I approach you. I sit down next to you. I'm like, "Look, man, I don't know you. You don't know me.
Yeah.
I see that you guys look so happy and you guys are doing something right. I feel miserable sitting over there. This is what's kind of going on in my life. I feel like I'm failing as a dad. I just feel down. All the
Yeah.
things, right? All the things. You in that moment get to give me 1 to 1.5 pieces of advice to help get me through that.
I pray for more things like that to happen in my life, by the way. Uh, Quite honestly. A lot of times, what I find myself saying to somebody, not quite that situation, but similar, because usually at that stage, somebody's pretty beat up based on what you're describing. First of all, I want them to know that they're worthy, they're loved, God loves them. Um, I didn't always know that I was worthy, and that's a very sad place to be. So I want them to know that they're worthy. I want them to know that they're loved and valued. And you show that by offering the invitation to join and be a part of the community. And that's important. Again, I'm going to a retreat. There are going to be people there. They've been fighting it all week. There will be a couple of people today that will not show up because the devil's going to take them out, and they're going to hear that thing on their shoulder that says, "Don't go to that."
Don't do it.
And there are going to be guys at that event that are going to show up, and all week that guy's been sitting on their shoulder going, don't do it. Don't do it. Be guarded. Don't do this. Don't do that. And, we always have that guy on our shoulder that says, you're not good enough. You're not loved. I think the biggest thing we can do as men when we're enjoying each other's company is if there's an opportunity to offer that invitation, we need to make it. That's exactly what Jesus did. Exactly what Jesus did. And when you offer that invitation to somebody to sit at your table and break bread, you're offering that same invitation. And, I make this invitation. I find myself a lot inviting people to things. Here's what I'm amazed at, Jay. How many people don't take me up on that invitation?
Probably a lot.
And it's a sincere invitation to be a part of the community. Take me up on a phone call. I freely give my phone number out. I offer people on my podcast all the time an invitation for an initial call. It's free. It costs you absolutely nothing. And you can decide for yourself. Do I want to be a part of this guy's community? Do I not want to be a part of this community? What do I want to do? And I offer that invitation. I'm blown away at how many people don't take me up on it.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And I always think to myself, so you're just going to try to figure out life on your own? I mean, I'm a golfer. I have a golf coach. I have a health coach. I have a business coach. I've had a podcast coach. I mean, I take this seriously. Why? I can't do it all on my own. I can't do it. And I'll admit to that. Some people would say, I'm man enough to admit it. I am man enough to admit it. I can't do this all on my own. And I don't think any man should feel like, oh, well, I've got something to prove. I have to do it all on my own. You don't. You don't have to have all the answers. And just because, for example, like in the coaching world, just because, Tiger Woods, for example, hasn't had a golf coach in a number of years, but he had a lot of them while he was, and at this point, he probably doesn't need one, but it never hurts to have eyes on your golf swing, and, and I know a lot of people use this analogy. If Tiger Woods has a has a coach, why don't you? Jack Nicklaus had a golf coach for many years. It was his father, by the way, and so, these things are important because trying to do life on our own can be a huge burden, especially when you're a young dad. Man, there's a lot going on when you're a young dad. When you're a young dad, you're trying to figure out how to be a dad. You're trying to, how do I even be a good husband and support my wife? These are complicated things, man.
Yeah.
Let's make no bones about it. And the most masculine thing you can do is go, you know what? This is a little bit of a rough patch. I need to talk with somebody about this. That's a very authentic, vulnerable, and good place to be.
100%. Well, Mike, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to plug you real quick. You can find, the people listening can find more of you on Facebook at Coach Mike Van Pelt. They can find you on Twitter or X, the artist formerly known as Twitter. True Man Coaching over there. They can find you on Instagram at True Man Coaching. They can find you on LinkedIn at Mike Van Pelt. They can find you on YouTube at True Man Podcast. And of course, you can download True Man Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Yep.
So and as they say in the business, that's a that's the show, folks. That's a wrap again, Mikey. Thank you so much for your time today. Really, really appreciate it. Appreciate your insights, your wisdom, and for sharing freely with us today. So
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Jay. Had a great time.